So you're from Australia. Tell me about your background. Who were you in high school?
Who was I in high school? I was the nerdy person who couldn't say boo to his shadow. Who would I played music. I was in the marching band. I was in the Sydney Olympic marching band. There's a fun fact most people don't know. So I played saxophone in that band. And here's one thing: I couldn't read one piece of sheet music. I had to memorize. You had to memorize the whole thing, but I had to memorize it by the sounds. So I had to memorize it by the sound of the percussion line, and the percussion line would play because I was playing sax. What really sucked is when I had to come in on those first few beats. I was like, oh, I was always a beat behind. But like, so that was, I started there. And as a youngster, I would fly from Australia to Hong Kong to trade shows in Hong Kong. Back in the early days, I would go and buy products. I didn't care what it was, bedazzled bra straps, cameras, you name it. I'd come back on home to Australia, and I'd set up an e-commerce store. Back then it was Yahoo store was back in 2000. And I'd start selling those products online, and I had to work out how to sell those products in the first 30 days to pay the credit card bill that I used to actually do this whole initiative. And then it just kept growing from there.
So when you were in high school, you were in a marching band. Were you? You said you were a nerd. Were you more a nerd into the books, into the computers, or were you really an A student? How were you as a student, and how does that impact your future of becoming into tech?
I was a student who knew how to get stuff done. So I was a smart student, but wouldn't necessarily apply myself and study because I didn't wasn't necessarily interested in it. I was always fascinated about human behavior and business. Probably what led me into the world of criminology, then applied criminal profiling to business. But yeah, as a student, uh, I always got told it's not necessarily the A's you need. It's just getting through it, right? So I kind of like applied that get through it last minute procrastination. There was probably the ADHD kicking in and all the caffeine drinks because I'd rather back then I was playing StarCraft, right? Like StarCraft was the game to play. We'd play that with the friends, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're really dating yourself with the video games and some of the Yahoo.com. Everyone has. If you said MySpace, I think that would drive people crazy.
Well, being in Australia, I didn't really. I think I had a MySpace thing, but I didn't get it. Like I didn't get the thing, right? And then we didn't have Facebook because it was way behind, right? So, but I was always fascinated. And one of the things I was doing, even when I was younger, I realized I wanted to get information from the source, not second and third hand. So I would actually fly to the US to come to conferences all the time, go to events, go to conferences. Because back then I was learning e-commerce, SEO, all that type of stuff. And people would be looking at me like, you came from Australia for this conference? I'm like, yeah. Like I literally traveled for 3 days to get here. And they're like, that's a long time. I'm like, yeah, no, the longest part of the travel was from LA to Atlanta. Like that was the longer part of the travel, not the part from Australia to here. It was the crap I had to go through to literally get there. So yeah, and I've always applied that approach to say, where is the source of this information? How do we go there so we get it firsthand? So that's a different approach.
I think that's very funny that you bring up the layovers and the time it takes to fly in the States, because I lived in Europe and the public transportation there is so much more efficient than the United States. If they say they're going to be at a location, it's not going to be late. It's going to be there at that time. It's pretty interesting. And I wonder how much tech and data analytics and AI is being integrated into that to expand into that area. So it's pretty interesting, the differences in cultures and how we maximize it, what we care about, because it's
100%.
known in the United States that you're going to have late transit, but other countries would not deal with that.
Yeah, it just I love the public transport system in Europe, and I miss that type of stuff because you can't. It doesn't really exist here in the US. In Canada, it exists a bit more, but yeah, and like I'm doing one automation system right now for some clients who run e-commerce. I'm literally overlaying weather pattern data to their sales data to show them how in their retail stores weather is impacting product sales. And that's just that in itself is like quite fascinating.
Let's move back and talk through your background and what you actually specialize in and how organizations can maximize efficiency through AI or automation.
Yeah, so my background, I have a law and criminology degree. So I was like, so it was criminal profiling. Back in the early days, I wanted to join the Australian Federal Police, and that's where I was kind of on that track, right? And then I moved into the world of applying criminology profiling to marketing and sales, and I've always been in there. Became a gamification expert, which is all just a funny word for user engagement. How do we make something attention getting like games? And then was always dealing with the world of human behavior and optimization. Then fell into the world of automation. So I now automate systems in businesses, and I help businesses automate and deploy automations to augment their employees, to improve employee productivity and efficiency. And we practice what we preach. So one of our companies that we deploy this for. So I have Automated Boring as our let's call it our research automation company. And I actually show clients what we do because we use it with automated tax credits. So we're building out a whole bunch of automation systems for dealing with the IRS. And we prototyped this system just this year in 2024 with some clients, and we helped them scale from 250,000 in sales to well over $100 million in tax credits processed. And we did that in 8 months. And that was all because of automation. And what I mean by that is like they deal with a lot of accountants processing paperwork, filling in PDFs and all this stuff, 2.5 hours per file, right? We reduced the accountant's effort from 2.5 hours to not even needing the accountant and taking now 60 seconds to complete that entire process. That allowed that company to scale from 500 files per month to literally 100,000 files per day. So that's the big impact of that. And that's what we now make available for companies.
Very interesting. So you did mention that you came to the United States for a lot of conferences. I hope and encourage that you're still going to conferences. What are top 5 conferences that you find most valuable to you?
So I actually haven't been to any conferences in real life, probably in the last 2 years. I catch a lot of the recordings. Now I kind of like just process the recordings. I'll pay for the recordings and listen to the recordings of those conferences, so I can consume more online. I'm always consuming stuff. So unfortunately, I haven't. I am going to be looking in the world of joining a few more masterminds, what have you, and kind of higher level networking. Because I really want to understand the dynamics more associated to scaling a business to 100 million and beyond. Not just, hey, like, yeah, we're going to get to 1 million, 5 million, whatever it is. It's like, hey, it's that those different triggers to go beyond those numbers.
So moving into your current situation, so you mentioned you scaled the business up to 100 million. What were some of the key friction points you ran into, and how did you overcome them?
So some of the big friction points was we were only scaling one part of the file processing. There was customer support processing issues, client fulfillment. They failed to scale the billing metrics with that. And they didn't understand the ramifications of when if you don't get paid for services, if you're working on a contingency or performance basis and you don't get paid for 6 months, the impact of that on the operational cash flow, because now as you start scaling files and scaling your tech infrastructure. So there was a whole bunch of things that we learned rapidly that we're able to evolve. And then when we did that the second time, we were able to improve and optimize it. And now I'm doing it a third time. Like we've re-engineered the company from the get-go, that we're literally automating customer support, fulfillment, data analysis, quality checking, not just lead acquisition, because a lot of people focus on automating lead acquisition and they fail to fully automate fulfillment. And if you can automate fulfillment, you're actually far more successful. And my recommendation for anyone who's looking at, hey, what should I automate? Fulfilling and delivering on your product, then your customer support, then making sure you got customer engagement, then go back and automate marketing. Because I showed some clients in real time how we optimized our lead cost from $54 to $12 per lead. And then we improved our conversion rates on landing pages from 2% to 24%. And that whole process only took 3 weeks. Like, it doesn't take long if you know the right levers to pull, if that makes sense. But a lot of people pull the wrong levers, they get all this work, and they're on this hamster wheel of it turns into the wheels fall off the bus because they can't fulfill.
That's very interesting. I actually went to a Halloween party recently, and I met a gentleman who was running a tree company. And someone approached him with the same idea of automating his marketing. And one of the challenges he had was that he didn't really capitalize on it. Was he was at his limit of performance. So he was working. It's a small business, 2 or 3 people in that business, and he mentioned he couldn't do the marketing strategy with the automation because if he did receive more work, he wouldn't be able to fulfill that work. So there's a challenge and the limitation in that. But what you mentioned does make a lot of sense, because if you are starting with marketing or trying to bring in more customers and you don't have that workflow to efficiently manage it, you're going to just hit a bottleneck and then you're going to lose customers in the long run.
Well, you burn out your team, you burn out your infrastructure, and if you're starting to turn over people who are fulfilling, you have that huge problem. It's one of the things we're also we've built systems for many years now around helping content creators monetize their communities. So for a lot of content creators, digital publishers, they really aren't earning a lot of money and they don't know how best to monetize, and they're kind of pulling on multiple strategies all at once. But they usually fail to own their audience and list. So for one of the services we offer, we literally work with content publishers and we help them create their own mobile app, their own mobile communities that allow them to have greater flexibility and monetization channels, but also building a tribe behind them that's not platform dominated. So they use the platforms as feeders, and they're never, because we always see these people who are these TikTok influencers who think they're doing all this type of big stuff, but TikTok changes an algorithm and literally their money could be cut in half or gone overnight. This has happened. This happens all the time with platforms, and it will continue to happen. So bringing systems for business stability. So that's one of the new services that we've really been helping a lot of people do. And we're seeing a lot of success even with that. Just people with small audiences. And what's fascinating is people think they need 100,000 followers to make a lot of money. That's not the case at all.
I think you made some good points. And, one of the things I want to give you is my background. So I started this podcast because I was trying to get into a PhD program. And I eventually didn't get into that program. So I was going to just do the research on my own and started doing some research and seeing what I can find and build it out. Eventually I get into a different program. So I'm working in that program now. But that led me to this podcast, right? And what I wanted to solve in that PhD program was kind of like the Terminator effect, is automation, is AI going to replace jobs, and are humans at risk for it, right? And so what are you seeing as far as when you do automate tasks and it forces, like you mentioned, you have a customer who reduces a 40-hour work week of time processing papers or payroll. We'll use that as an example, 40 hours, and you can get that done in maybe an hour now. Are they reallocating those resources, or are they capitalizing on that and putting it to their bottom line?
So it all depends on the company. So we do a lot of like the old term is robotic process automation, which is the term before AI automation. We do a lot of that for companies, and employees love the idea of it until we start working in their field and in their tasks. And a lot of employees have defined their role by the tasks they get done or the tasks they fail to get done. And what I'm seeing is you need to embrace AI with every role and every task within every company. And therefore, you need to start be looking at what can my people be doing to augment the AIs to improve efficiency, improve profitability. So we just did a whole bunch of automations for an accounting division for an architectural firm. And the accounts team started to see how efficient the AI was and the automations we were doing were. And so they got really scared about their job security. But what they were failing to understand is they were doing these tasks, but the tasks they're doing aren't most profitable for the company. There's 20 other things the company wants them to be doing. And as a result, so they started to hate the AI automation because we're taking their job. No, we're taking the tasks that aren't best use of their time. And what we do want to do is literally have them control AI. So what a lot of people will do is will be what they call human in the loop. So the AI will be working with the human, and you'll literally have AI assistants. I know for our new company, we're literally designing the AI assistants for every role and then working out how we're placing employees around that. So that's a different approach, but a lot of companies aren't like that. So I can give you another example. We had a medtech client, and it took us a year and a half of conversations with them about AI, right? Because the leadership at that point in time were literally saying, I retire in 2 to 3 years. I just want to get through to retirement and not have to worry about learning and applying and creating an AI strategy, because I just want to get to retirement. And it took us a while to convince them and show them that, like, if you don't, you're not going to be number one in 3 years. You're going to lose that position in the market because of how fast AI is evolving. And those little fish right now that you think are guppies in the ocean, in 3 years, because of how they're leveraging AI, they will be the sharks and the whales that you're now worried about. So this is one of the things people need to think about, that yes, you can augment and not have people, 100%. That is one option. But you can create the tools so your people are 100 times more effective. And this is why, to be honest, we're about to release what we call Crew Forge, which is a tool that allows anyone with no coding skills literally to be able to deploy their own AI agents to assist them at any task they do within any company. Because I believe if I could empower you, Jonathan, to deploy the agents you need to make you more effective each day, you become more effective and more profitable. And every day there's new things you want to do, if that makes sense.
I think I'm on your side. I completely agree. So again, when I started the podcast, I started it with the interpretation of thinking that jobs are going to be reduced. And I thought the number was going to be about 40%, because I'll give you a scenario that I looked at, and I tried to use analogies that are really basic to me because I'm not the brightest bulb in the light in the room. But when you go to Walmart in the past, I remember in my young days, you would go to Walmart and you'd have 4 people ringing you out. And in the same analogy, what Walmart ended up doing was putting technology, if you want to call it, they didn't put AI, but they put a new technology to allow you to scan the product yourself. And they reduced their manpower to one person, and you ended up doing the work yourself. And so this is where I
Well,
started looking at it and saying this could be an impact on businesses. Go ahead.
what's fascinating is I'm literally in the home of Walmart right now. So I get to see all the deployments that they're doing at all these test stores they have here. And you're now seeing one employee running 100 checkouts. One employee manning 100 self checkouts. So when you're talking about efficient, they test drone delivery here for the last mile. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's coming. And yeah, there is a whole bunch of disruption. There will be a lot of jobs displaced, but there'll be a lot more people now needing to leverage or even program these AIs, and program their efficiency. I was talking to another company where their teams spend about 3 to 4 days pulling reports from current software systems before they can do the data analysis to provide it to clients. So it takes, like, the reporting process was meant to take 1 hour, but it's taking 3 to 5 days sometimes. So they're like, Ben, if we could just reduce that, so reporting, the report extraction only took us an hour, our people would be more efficient because they'd have more time to analyze the data and create insights. So one of the things I'm finding with all this automation stuff is it's the tedious, time-consuming task that should be automated. And people are looking for some perfect tool, some shiny, fancy robot, when that's not it. It's like, it's reading invoices, it's doing data extraction, it's the basic stuff. Because if you had better quality reporting sometime, if you had cleaner data, so it's a tool to clean the data from your marketing that's coming in to make you more efficient. Like, that makes a big impact for people.
I think one of the topics, and so that Walmart was one analogy. Another analogy is, if people making content creation. I've met a lot of people who, they may have a vlog or they may have a blog of a specific thing that they want to like talk about, and they really dive into that, but they don't want. That's what they want to do. They want to write. They didn't join that to do marketing and So you could use the AI to do the things you don't want to do and then maximize what you really want to do, which would make people happier. You would assume it would make them happier. But is that the only resistance you're facing? Is there any senior leadership resistance into integrating the AI into, or the, everyone's,
100%.
some people are opposed to it?
There's issues on all fronts. There's like some people like, oh, we don't want to deploy AI because AI is going to make us lose our voice or our persona. But I'm like, hold on. But all of your marketing posts and articles right now are literally being written by ChatGPT by your team, and you're saying that AI is going to cause you to lose your voice. Like, in the words of Virgin Mary, come again. Like, what the hell? Like, this is that with and it's more, I'm scared of AI and I don't know what to do. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kill it because I was safe when I killed it. But the problem is the world has moved, and it's these people who are playing catch up where it's going to be very, very dangerous for them over the next 2 years.
Going back to that thesis that I wrote, so I started out with 40%. What I ended up finding out in just limited research, what I've changed it to is that you're not going to be replaced by the AI. It's going to replace many jobs. It's going to force people to restructure. But what 100%, you're going to be replaced by another person who knows how to use the AI better than you. And so, like, and what are your thoughts about that?
100%. Like, uh, I can outperform, my small team can outperform very large teams because we're agile with AI and we can do more. Like, I just built a 20-person data analysis team that's got each AI of the 20 AIs we built literally have different backstories and personas and skill sets, and they use up to 3 different LLMs to drive their brain. And so the thing is what most people don't understand is they're like, oh, ChatGPT sucks, right? But I'm like, hold on, but ChatGPT is already smarter than 50% of Americans. And the latest studies on it show it's actually smarter than up to 90% of Americans. So technically, it's already smarter than you. So what's the real problem here? And the thing is people just, I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to leverage it because we're also dealing with generations of people who still don't know how to use their iPhone, right? They don't know that you can make $100,000 a month from your iPhone. They don't. So therefore, it's just like it's out of their realm. I feel sorry for the people who don't have any computer skills, which is a lot of people in this country and a lot of these people around the world, because it's a huge evolution. I can give you one example of, because I was in Australia. Most people didn't understand that Australia is a dial-up country. It was like back until even through the 2000s, dial-up internet. A modem. They would sit there and it would make that gurgling noise to actually connect, and like, so we didn't have Wi-Fi anywhere. We didn't have Wi-Fi when you go into a grocery store, right? And the difference in coming from Australia to the US, and just because you could get internet everywhere and what that made available. Like, I can remember selling video streaming products in Australia, and our problem was we had dial-up. So video buffering and video streaming was a pain in the ass. Does that make sense?
One thing I wanted to just push back and give, not really push back to you, but to the person who was the executive saying, I want to have my own voice. And I think that even goes into the person not understanding how to use the AI, not only ChatGPT, but there are other ones that you could upload your own information, your own dialogue, and then train the AI to your custom language. So it would inherently have your language. But again, that goes
100%.
into people not understanding how it works. And then even the chat GPT, if you use the tool right and you have the right prompts and you are really training it in a proper way, it will give you really tailored results. And if you train it in your language, it will talk and speak just like you, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, but the new models now are the agentic models, right? Which means using multiple small chat GPTs to achieve a task and breaking the task down in specialties and allowing. Now, so what most people don't understand, I'll give people a tip. If you're using ChatGPT, talk to it like you're training an intern or an assistant. Because a lot of people go, it should know what I want. I'm like, sweetheart, I don't even know what you want. How the hell does it know what you want? Right? So it's just like, talk to it like an assistant and an intern. And here's one tip: when you get to the end of a result and you've got an output you think that's okay, ask it this question: is there anything else you'd improve based on what I've told you, or how could we make this better? And then watch it analyze everything you've said, the whole conversation you've had with it, and watch the quality of that output change 100%.
I completely agree. And I think one of the things that's happening is all these organizations are breaking off into specialty AIs. And I think that's going to be a realm that you get into. If you're doing automation, how does that impact the medical community who have regulations that they're not able to share? So, there's going to be a community who break off and create AI automation, or, whatever you can do within the HIPAA laws and stuff.
100%. Yeah, and like I was just last night talking to a company who want to do automations and AI optimizations around compliance and helping companies achieve compliance standards. And this is the thing that a lot of businesses don't think about, because they're like, I've only got 3 people, right? Like I don't have to have these standards in place to achieve it. But like, if there was a system that helped you standardize and streamline, right? And it wasn't going to cost you $100,000 or $200,000 to achieve that. Like, wouldn't you like to benefit from that?
So I talked with a past guest, and he explained it in the best way, in the shortest possible way someone could ever explain what's happening. And he explained it. Imagine your computer, and if you go back to around the 80s, and he just said one sentence. He said, it's the cheapest, it's the most expensive, and the dumbest it's ever going to be in its life. So
Hmm.
as the time goes on, it's only going to get faster, smarter, and cheaper. So for you to resist it is only going to give other people a competitive advantage against you.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And yeah, I show people a lot of the automations we're building, or how we can now, using AI, deploy you an app and build your communities and help you monetize your community in a few days now. What used to be 2 months work, we can literally get done in 2 days. And it blows people's mind, because we're helping new people or digital creators who never had an additional stream of income. Some of them are now generating $1 million a year from a community that they weren't able to tap into. They had an audience, they had a following, but they never had a tribe that were monetized. Like, that's a whole different level of business for them.
So what are the top five robotics that are integrating AI right now? Do you know?
Uh, in robotic, how do you mean?
So I'm really fascinated by what Elon Musk wants to do with his robots. And, I see a lot of value in that. I also see value in some other features, medical devices that I've seen where if someone is paralyzed from the waist down, they
Hmm.
have exoskeletons that can come over to them and actually give them legs. It's really expensive right now. But again, if we're going on the theory that, as time goes on, all of those products are going to start becoming cheaper.
Well, those
And
products are
so
cheaper now than they were 2 years ago, right? Those wheelchairs that were $40,000 a few years ago are now $20,000, right? So you're 100% right in the robotic adaptation. What we haven't seen fully yet is when ChatGPT is connected to those type of devices. The only example consumers can relate to is Alexa or Siri. But now, and I don't know if people saw Rabbit OS, which launched, which was able to do their SaaS. Now imagine when you can tell something, hey, take my groceries list, order it, and make sure it comes into the fridge before 6 o'clock tonight.
that's going to be revolutionary. And, one of the things that I recently saw, or I had a guest on that was talking about, was I saw really high value in it, but in the moment, it's very challenging. What you do is you consume all of your products. You create your own database with your writings, your books, and then you create an avatar off of the AI, and the AI will respond to people, and so basically you have an assistant, but that assistant will actually filter people for you. So you basically have an AI assistant that will make decisions based off your past decisions, which are pretty interesting.
Yeah, so one of the things we did for our company was we identified in our buyer journey, there's 5 different personas. So one of the things we realized is when we were writing our advertising and our blogs, for example, we were speaking to just one voice, which wasn't resonating with some of that audience. So what we did is used AI to actually write articles in 5 different personas, and now we publish 5 times more content, but with each content piece speaking to a different persona. Because when I wrote something, it was talking to my version or assumption of who that audience member was. But through the AI refinement, I was able to niche down my communication. And even just doing that is extremely powerful. And here's the other thing, like if you aren't leveraging AI to assist you with your content publishing, because here what a lot of people would do, they'd use ChatGPT to create a blog post, and then they'd just post that same post on everything. Here's a tip for you. Create an AI agent that literally can take that blog post and now optimize it for Facebook, for X, for Instagram, for LinkedIn, for all these websites, wherever you want to publish it. Even turn it into audio with your voice. That now can be fully automated. So the thing is start thinking about how can I use AI to expand my distribution of content and just optimize that. If you just do that, I can promise you'll see a result.
I think this is an analogy we always use is getting in football in America. We have JV and varsity. And I think right now, a lot of people are on the JV bandwagon. They're using ChatGPT, they're creating a lot of content. But that next level is a step before that, putting in a system to use a ChatGPT or whatever AI you're using to search what's trending in the moment so that your posts are relevant to the moment, and then you're actually using keywords and all of these features to drive that to fit your audience. And the algorithms, which you mentioned, are constantly changing across a different application.
Yeah, we saw some old school SEO strategies recently, and we're like, well, why don't we test this? We deployed these old school SEO strategies, and we 4x'd our organic traffic and our site indexing in 3 weeks because now we had a deployment system that we put in place that was all AI driven, and it was literally giving the search engines what they wanted. But it's time consuming.
So I also noticed that you've written some books. Let's talk about the process of writing your books and how did that go for you? And let's talk about them.
Yeah, so the process of writing books is always fun and challenging at the time. Like if you want to sit there and just grind it out, it's like writing an essay. Some of them took me a few months, some of them took me a little bit longer. And it was really before the advent of AI tools. But it was really just a culmination of a lot of research that I was doing at the time and just being able to help share some stories with people on being more effective. Because I had the lucky ability to study under some of the guys who built the body language system for the CIA and that type of analysis that we're applying. So it was bringing those personality insights, leveraging personality connections. And I was just always trying to work out how do I make it simpler? How do I make it easier for you to deploy? Even with gamification, when I was doing gamification, I realized that there was a whole bunch of stuff missing from deploying game mechanics into a product or a business. So I created a framework that allowed me to deploy gamification into anything. I even created a card game that went with the book. You could literally play a card game with anyone and you could gamify any process in a few minutes. And this is type of that book process, but they're always a hell of a lot of work. And I don't know what the next book would be or if I even want to do one.
Books are always very challenging. So you said you worked with the CIA. So is it true? Have you ever seen the movie where the guy is like going to see the parents? I think it's called Meet the Parents, and he's like a CIA agent that's an old dad, and he's a human lie detector. Is that you think someone could tell other people are lying, or is that not a thing?
100%. 100%. So the thing is I was actually working with the people who worked with the CIA on training them for lie detection and deception and the use of body language and the body language triggers that they would actually teach them because it's less triggers than what most people think. It's only 6, and like it's just understanding these little things can help you improve your communication. And we then use those 6 to actually build an AI that you could overlay on your Zoom calls to understand when your customers didn't believe you or what the customer was actually thinking without that customer telling you what they were thinking. So that was fascinating in what that made possible for us and some of the doors that it opened up. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting of how you would integrate that to see how people are reacting to what you're messaging in a sales call. That's actually pretty interesting. I read a book not recently, when I was younger, about it was by a CIA agent who explained how to do this, and it was mostly about body language. And one of the things that person mentioned, I know we're getting off topic with AI, but it's just conversation, is most of the lie detector part is creating a baseline of the person. I think a lot of us, what we do is we once we do have that baseline, we want to ignore it so that we get the answer we
Yeah,
want. And so
100%.
creating that baseline of the person, and when you're with someone, and someone, you're with someone for years, and that they do the same routines. Most people do the same routine over and over again. And then they do something that's different, or their behavior is different, then there's an anomaly there. And so that's where you can really pinpoint that inaccuracy.
Yeah, well, one of the things is just understanding, even when your loved ones, they've got something that's bothering them, and being able to ask them about it, right? It's just going, hey, what did I miss that I should be paying attention to? Or maybe being more supportive in that moment by just being able to go, hey, not going, hey, I saw you move this part of your body. It's like, what's going on? How can I help you? Like, what do you need right now? Like, just taking a minute and even asking that question can change the quality of a relationship overnight. People think it's all about being manipulated or persuasion or whatever. Yeah, you can use that. There's a whole bunch of what you can do with linguistics. Like the call I just had literally before this was a professor at the University of Arkansas who's wanting me to help them with doing some linguistic AIs based on what we've been doing. Because a lot of this is based on sentiment and linguistic analysis and even adapting for personality. And one of the things they study is dating, and how dating apps and these new AI apps create relationships and bonds with people that are stronger than their human bonds. So there's like, that in itself is a whole new world with these robot girlfriends, or robot boyfriends that exist, and it's already a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I can tell you, I speak a lot to the AI. I have to admit it. I have, I have the ChatGPT web application on my phone, and almost every day, 2 times a week, I drive into the office, and it's an hour drive. So most of the time, I'm just sitting there talking to the AI, but it's mostly educational things. Like I'm trying to learn something. I use it as a tool to continue learning. And then sometimes there's also a part of this podcast where I do a interviews with them and see what they're talking about in current trends. What I've learned is that from the newest model of the paid version, it doesn't search the internet. So what I have to do, the reason that I use the driving as conversation with the AI is because I have to get the paid version to the point where it forces me to the cheaper version, and that version will search the internet. And so
Yep.
then I can say, search the internet on President Donald Trump and see what's going on and what do you think about this? And then, do that back and forth with it. So it's pretty interesting to see some of the results that it gives.
It's fantastic, and some of the new opportunities we're having with what we can now do with our the agents and the agentic models on researching the internet, finding trends. Like we just built one that literally can crawl Twitter, Reddit, LinkedIn, Hacker News, all the news sites, analyze them for the trending topics, and create different summaries for you to then work out what you want to talk about, or then research topics. Like it's now in a fascinating world of where we'll even be next year. And this, as you said, if this is the dumbest, the crappiest, the stupidest it will be, but I can tell you, I'm getting dumber every day, where it's getting smarter and more powerful. So the thing is that when people go, "Oh, I don't want to use that," I'm like, "All right, well, that's kind of like saying you want to run your business like the Amish, and you want to stay in the generation of horse and buggy, which is okay if that is your choice."
hmm And, that's also, you have to understand that. And you have to be, you can't, and this is something that, so I was in the military, and one of the gimmicks that they get you in the military is like, the recruiter lied to me, right? And they're like, oh, well, the recruiter lied to me, and that's why I'm here right now. But on your second contract, I heard this from a senior enlisted one time. He just looked over and snapped out a guy and said, hey, look, you're on your second contract. There's no recruiter lying to you. You know what you signed up this round, And so I use that analogy to say these people who are resistant to it are the same. The analogy would be the people who were resistant to computers and they wouldn't comply to computers. They're probably not being as profitable as they could if they leverage their computers. It's the same. So in 10 years or in 5 years, when they're not maximizing what they can, their potentials, their profitability, then the only person that they could blame is themselves for not keeping up or remaining ahead of the trend.
Yeah, well, they're also the same people that think they've got to work 40, 60, 80 hours a week to be efficient or effective. My question is how do I work 4 hours or less, but gain that 80-hour or 100-hour a week productivity? Or how do I shift my workday so my systems are working 24 hours a day, yet I only work 4 to 6 hours a day?
Have you ever heard of Robert Kiyosaki?
Yeah. And that
So he
whole
wrote, I was
blockchain
listening.
and
Well, I think this is the gentleman I'm speaking about is the Rich Dad Poor Dad book
yep.
series. And okay, yeah, I was listening to one of his audio series from the early 90s, I think it was, and he actually was bringing up the same concept that I'm trying to highlight right now is the world is evolving in a way of not what you know, but how fast you can get what you know. And he said that in the 90s, which was pretty interesting. So it's exactly what you're saying in the sense of it's not what you can do, but it's how fast you can do what you can do, using these tools that we have. And so
one of
I
the
bring
cool
that into,
tools
go ahead.
one of the cool tools I just created is like there's so much podcast and so much content, right? People find it overwhelming. So one of the cool tools I created for myself was literally this. I'm like, listen to this podcast. So it's an AI. Listen to this podcast, summarize it, and create an action plan of the strategies to implement any of the ideas in that. So now I can see what would it actually take. And then I even built an evaluation bot of actually going, is it worth my time right now to implement this strategy? And if I could, how could I leverage AI to do it? So not only is it getting new knowledge, it's actually taking that knowledge, summarizing it, giving an action plan of the task, and then going, here's how we could achieve these parts, and this is what the human would have to do. So now the human gets the recipe on how to deploy a new strategy that was spoken about that we're not doing right now. Like that one thing. It's not about consuming the content. It's about how do I deploy the content?
As you're saying that, I'm laughing in my head because I'm like, man, uh, he doesn't even want to consume his content normal. He wants to optimize it for its efficiency. And then I don't know what you're going to do with your free time.
Well, I want to have a life, and I want to empower my team to have a life, because the thought of having to go to events and having to do all this type of stuff is like, I would say that's old school thinking. It's like, how do we consume all the speeches from that event and create an action plan to deploy it? Because I can send people to conferences and then them never deploy anything that was learned at that conference. Like, that's a waste of time, money, and resources.
And so I think one of the in the next 5 years, I was reading, all the computers are going to have AI integrated into they're going to have the computer chips. They're going to have the apps already in the computer. How is that going to impact, you or anyone else using these tools?
Well, the phrase already exists, Google it, right? But now it's going to be like, Google do it. So the thing is it's just making it more consumer focused, because 20 years ago, the cell phone didn't even exist. All right. Or the cell phone, like when I was graduating 20 years ago in 2000, it was the Nokia flip phone is where it was, right? 24 years ago. Nokia flip phone. We've now got smartphones that are more powerful than the computers that launched the space shuttle. What are we going to have in a few years when the phones are interconnected with AI chips that ChatGPT literally reside on your phone? Not in the cloud, but on your phone.
Yeah, I'm thinking through that. And one of the challenges I'm thinking through is how would well maybe the AI would figure that out, but how would they get that much data onto your phone and be able to manage it, So, I mean, I see some limitations, but I think I'm sure they have
It's the
resolutions for it
localization
already.
of that data. Because the thing is you don't need the whole brain. It's just like, okay, you have Google Maps right now. You've got a map of the Earth. Do you know that Google Maps downloads the maps that you use the most or where you're going to be? So then you've got optimized mapping on your device. So it's not about giving you the $100 billion characters. It's about giving you the one chapter of the book that you're only reading.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. You're making me think through some processes right now. So, what type of advice would you give to someone who is behind the curve of AI, trying to get caught up, or they're trying to get into a new industry, like what you're doing, or in their own industry?
Work out what you could automate in your job set today. I'm not talking about getting fancy. Like some of the most profitable things we do are literally automating the most boring tasks that exist. That's why the company is called Automate Boring. Think about the things that will give you more productivity and performance, right? And it may literally be simple things. Or I always ask people, what are the tasks you hate doing? The tasks you've been putting off because it's just like you'd rather go to the dentist. Automate that bad boy, right? And you might be surprised how easy it is to automate that process. Because if you just got that summary of that task in your email, you become more efficient. For the people who are looking to monetize, there's massive opportunity because most people aren't efficient at using a computer or a system, and they'll never deploy automations. So there's massive opportunities right now for helping people to deploy automations. And if you've been outsourcing to a team in the Philippines or India, or you applied the 4-hour work week to do this type of stuff, everything that they are doing for you can be 100% automated. So now, therefore, what would you have that automation? What would you have your assistant team do?
Very interesting. You're making me think through some processes as I stayed quiet for a second. So I think, I mean, if you're asking me that question, I don't know if you were asking me that question or you were done. I would have my team focus on making me more revenue. So maybe the task they like, but the most important aspect of your business and where you can grow that part, So it's actually a very interesting concept. So I think we're coming down to the end of the time. So I do want to appreciate you for coming on and joining us. And I'm going to link everything in the description below. I'm going to put your website and your company links so that people can reach out to you. So I want to close
Yeah, sure.
the floor with you and give you some last closing out words if you want to hold the ground.
Yeah, so if anyone's looking to, might be sitting there going, well, Ben, how the hell would I deploy automation or how would I deploy AI? I literally provide people with a free booking opportunity to schedule a call with me. And we just brainstorm what AI deployments you could do, how it could apply to you, what you can do. I offer that as a free resource to everybody, just to give everyone a hand up. But I would also challenge you to start thinking about and just start asking the questions of what could we? And more importantly, how do I implement it? But how do I implement it so it's implemented in 48 hours or 72 hours or less? If someone tells you this is a 30-day build, a 90-day build, that person needs to be bitch slapped. Because the thing is like, add the challenge of how do we do it and have it shipped by Friday? Because that framing of it now focuses on the execution. And there are new automation tools that you can literally deploy anything in minutes or hours. The problem is a lot of the old IT team or smart people know older tools because they got trained in older tools. They're not aware. And making them aware of these new tools being available is a game changer. So how do I deploy this? And how do I, who's got no code or no fancy experience, deploy it by Friday is a fantastic challenge to make you more efficient in anything you deploy.
Yes, sir. So as I mentioned, I'll post everything in the links in the description down below. I appreciate you, Ben. And, I look forward to seeing what you work on in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.